All right. That was an interesting conversation we just had with that customer. But it was cool, and I'm glad that they swung by. But welcome back, everybody, again to Top Shelf Video. My name is Eli, one of the co-owners.
And I would be Jaime, the brother and co-owner.
Yep. And we're it's the Top Shelf Video podcast. Talking video stores, talking movies. It's like I was sort of telling like Denise, we're by no means, this is we are not film experts. We're just film consumers. But I think in a lot of ways, the video store and movies that we've watched like really formed who we are. And I think
absolutely.
Even with you going into the military, right? I think, and I went more into the actual like world of 3D graphics and things like that. Like I still feel like I just remember there was a time when you brought me on base and we got to see like the interior of like, I think it was like an Apache maybe, like in the cockpit or something. I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying that or
no, it's all good.
Yeah.
I'm out already.
Yeah. But I just remember seeing the cockpit and being like, holy crap. Like it's as cool as I would have imagined I wanted it to be in my head, and movies, whether the accuracy of what you're actually seeing is real, it's always hard to say, right? Because like, I would doubt that the military would want you to see what it actually looks like,
Yeah.
And honestly, I think in movies, it's better to make it up and make it cooler, and look good more than it would be functional. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to say that because I was thinking about that, about like, we enjoy talking about movies and we enjoy like doing this podcast, but by no means are we like, film experts.
Not at all. No. We're just lovers.
Experts of the 80s.
Yeah. We just love movies and just talking about it and just
grew up in the era. Like we grew up in a very like special era that I think would be very hard to replicate. And not to get into, it was better, here or then or whatever. But we grew up in an era of things coming to light for the very first time. And we were kind of like the test subjects of a lot of that stuff. And I think it's cool. I think we should document that and talk about that because, I don't think a generation is going to be able to experience what we have experienced. But
no, absolutely not. Yeah, we got to see the development of like CGI in movies. We went from 8-bit games to 16-bit to 32 to now we've got, Engine 5 or whatever, Real Engine or whatever. I mean, it's like
Unreal
Engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have had the opportunity to live through all of that and see it develop because like now, kids just have shit in the palm of their hand and they don't even think twice about it. I used to play Snake on my Nokia phone. And now you got guys playing Madden and FIFA now.
I feel like there was also, I mean, I don't know, maybe it was urban legend, but I remember the Texas Instrument calculators that we had to have for geometry and trigonometry. Like, I feel like there was always like rumors that there were games that you could play on there, but like if there was, I didn't know about them.
We didn't crack the code.
Yeah, I didn't know what the code was there, but and then like living through also like the arcades, right? Like the era of the arcade and like seeing that evolve as well too, it was a really, like I mean even now, there's Dave and Buster's and it's cool, but I think seeing it from its like infancy was like a really unique and interesting experience because just that anticipation of like wanting to go to the arcade and knowing that there could be a new game or something that just kind of gets substituted in and whatnot and I mean I think that ties very much into like the video store as well too, right? Of just seeing the evolution of technology and all those things sort of happen in front of you. I mean, it makes us feel old, but there is something very like special about, like you were saying, like there were a lot of vector based graphic games. And then when you started seeing color with like actual 2D sprites and stuff like that, you're like, whoa, holy cow. Like this is advancing quickly.
Yeah,
and then even within that, even within a very short window, like when things became more refined, it was just like, how is this even happening? Like, and I think as a young person, I don't think we really appreciated that as much as it was happening in real time. And we just were like, I want more.
I need my roll of quarters, and we put them on the game, and we got next, and all that. No, video games and VHS, movie rentals and video games was definitely that was our thing. That was what defined our generation, I guess. As far as entertainment goes, anyway.
It was like the peanut butter and jelly and the chocolate and I don't know, whatever goes.
The Reese's chocolate in my peanut butter.
That's it's almost how video games and video stores kind of felt.
It's crazy how the video games definitely, I know, especially for us, it maybe not so much Mario, our youngest brother. I don't remember him being a gamer as much, but I know, like, you and me, we were the ones that, like, didn't want to, go to dinner because we were in the middle of a game, and I mean, that was us. We were trying to beat the levels and all that stuff, and it's cool how I have good memories of, like, the games that we would play, and I remember when we got our first Atari 2600, and our first Nintendo. But well,
and if I remember correctly, though, ours was not. We had an Atari, but it wasn't a authentic 2600. It was a Sears.
It was branded, a Sears off brand, but it played Atari games.
Yeah, and it was the worst controller. That thing, like, I think I still have carpal tunnel from that controller because it was such a weird design. But it was funny how we always got the cheaper versions of effectively everything, and we even got the cheaper version of the Atari. But as long as it could play cartridges, it did not games. Matter.
Yeah, like, we weren't bitching. We were just happy that we had one in the house. So
yeah.
But so many good memories of video games. And then as I've gotten older, I've learned more about. I was going to mention if speaking of video games, if you had heard of the Polybius urban legend, do you know anything about that?
No.
Okay, so
the what again? Say it again.
So the game, the urban legend is about a video game in an arcade up in the Northwest back in the early 80s. The game was called Polybius. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it was a vector-based game. It was kind of like Tempest, I guess. I don't know if you remember that game, but it was. That was one of my favorite games.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently, this was early '80s. So it was Cold War era. Blah blah blah. Right. So apparently, the CIA was under. They had reason to believe that the Russians had figured out a way to mind control, right? So of course the CIA's got to get on that shit too, right? So so apparently, or as the urban legend goes, they created the government created a video game called Polybius, and it was meant to experiment on mind control, like with the sounds and the colors and frequencies and all that shit. It was supposedly supposed to test if it could alter your behavior and what have you. I don't know if it's true or not. Whoa. I mean, but it's interesting. Yeah, if you want to look into it, it's
weird.
It's interesting. It's
wait, so early 80s? Because I guess so. I think my history, real quick, is just the CIA was formed during the Cold War, right? It was to counter the KGB, I think, or somewhere
right before then. Yeah, it was somewhere around that time. Yeah,
because I guess that was like post World War II, so it's sometime in the 50s. And so I guess they were doing all that stuff. So I guess like technology and computers came into play around the 70s. And so, I mean, I guess that kind of aligns with, that's weird though. I've never heard of that specifically.
Yeah.
So the idea was just to see if it was mind control. So I wonder,
well, because there were stories of like, I guess they could mess with the settings or whatever to see if it would cause. I mean, and again, it's just the urban legend that I'm getting secondhand. But supposedly there were fights would happen in the arcade. There was supposedly a kid was stabbed. There were kids that there was a kids. There were kids who would have like medical I guess anxiety attacks. It was meant with the frequencies and colors. So it was. I
mean, that doesn't sound.
It doesn't
sound too far fetched.
Exactly.
And stimulation in terms of and it's funny because video games now, we have to make sure that that's it's a known commodity, right? That if you're gonna have a lot of flashing in your game or whatever, can cause seizures, and things like that.
Yeah.
And we probably didn't know that very well. Back then, I mean, granted, I was not a game developer in the 80s, so I take no responsibility, but I think it was just we probably just didn't know any better about certain things and certain behaviors. But yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder if CIA agents were also the coin operators, the guys that handing out tokens. Because right? How are you collecting all this data, right? I mean, unless because the internet, let me think.
There was an article about it. You remember back when we were starting, I guess when we were first started adulting, do you remember GamePro magazine?
Yeah.
There was an article about it in one of those. I don't know what issue, but it was also mentioned that there was that there's an article about the government and the whole mind altering or whatever, and so there's a supposedly, I haven't been able to find it, but there is an article in GamePro magazine about Polybius. And the other thing, which is what ties into this movie perfectly, is that supposedly there were a few kids, I guess, depending on how well they did in the game or whatever. Supposedly kids, players of the game would just disappear. And there was rumor that they were recruited either by the NSA or the CIA because they obviously showed the mental capacity to beat the game or whatever, and
or understand the puzzle,
the puzzles and the complexities of the game, the ones that did really well and scored whatever, that people would just come up missing, and so the rumor was, well, maybe they got hired by the CIA to be the, it was and I recently just heard about it. I go down the rabbit holes, and it was just the fact that, when you brought up the movie we're going to talk about today, I was like, holy shit. I literally just, and I was like, let's watch this. It's just, that whole urban legend is really interesting if you ever want to get into that one. But,
it's funny. I've never heard of it. And I've been in the video game industry for 23 years now, but it's a funny thing. I think I'll bring that up with some folks at work, but yeah, I guess we should talk about the fact that another banger from 1984.
Oh hell yeah!
1984.
It was such a great year, dude.
Yeah,
oh
it's
my God.
The finest of wines that you could probably get. But yeah, we're talking about Last Starfighter. And Last Starfighter, which there's a couple things right from the onset that I feel like based on some of the movies that we've talked about, there's some stuff that I think I guess you'll see a lot of trends and whatnot. But one of the things that I think is actually kind of cool about this movie, just even from the onset. So this movie is from 1984. It is distributed by Universal, but the second logo that comes up right at the very beginning, if we go all the way back to literally the start of the tape, it's the Universal logo. And then there's the Lormer logo, which is the one that kind of looks like an Atari logo. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like it looks like an L, and then it sort of traces out, and it's very vector based. It has a very, very particular look, and it looks like a video game logo,
right?
Like an old 80s Atari logo, but
the sleek, kind of sloping lines and stuff.
Yeah, seeing that logo just almost immediately hit me of just oh man, I forgot about that logo, but I loved that logo for whatever reason. If I ever saw that logo on movies that we were watching, I would get really excited as a young person of just it almost represented quality or something, right? And so yeah, it's The Last Starfighter. it stars Lance Guest, who trying to think what some of his other
Jaws: The Revenge.
Oh, that's right.
That's where I know him from.
Yeah.
I went through his filmography. That's the only one that I remember him from. He plays one of the sons.
The youngest Brody kid.
Yeah. Because that's the Jaws: The Revenge is where the dad's already died. Yeah. And it's him. It's got like Mario Van Peebles and him and the mom. Yeah.
Yeah, that was on TV just the other day. And then Catherine Mary Stewart, which I remember her from Night of the Comet. I don't know if you remember that. That's the one where the comet goes overhead and like wipes out everybody. It's like her on the cover with, I think, like an Uzi, and her friend is with her with like, and she's in a cheerleader outfit. And it's only they think that it's only them two that have survived like the I don't know if it's the apocalypse or whatever, but like everybody vanishes from Earth. Oh. And Night of the Comet. It's also a big 80s sort of movie. But I think a lot of the other people in this movie are, I think you could say, a lot of character actors from that era. You know, like their faces look very familiar, but they were probably never big stars in anything in particular. Uh-huh. But this movie was directed by Nick Castle. Do you know who Nick Castle is by chance? The director?
No.
So you'll find this interesting. I know we're not like a trivia podcast, and I'm sure some people may already know this, but so Nick Castle is really good friends with, or was, and I think they still are. He's good friends with John Carpenter. Okay. You know, of a lot of movies that I love.
Yeah.
Nick Castle is the guy who plays Mike Myers in the original Halloween.
No shit.
Yeah, like he was an actor, but that was more of a low budget. Like, hey, buddy, could you do me a favor? Because you have a good look. You have the look that I'm looking for, and I would like for you to play the killer in my movie that's going to wear a mask.
No way.
Anyways,
that's awesome.
So Nick Castle, is actually Mike Myers, and in the more recent the reboots or the more recent ones, when they show old Michael Myers, that is also Nick Castle. At least in the original like reboot. I don't know about parts 2 and 3 or whatever of the new series, but right. I know in the original one he reprises his role, and I think they got like a young, because he is a bit older, and I think they got a younger guy to do a lot more of the more physical stunt stuff. But I always loved that about this movie, the fact that one of my favorite movies, Last Starfighter, is directed by Mike Myers.
By Mike Myers. Yeah.
By Michael Myers, like the killer of Halloween. But
killer director. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool little nugget. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
He is a very interesting dude. And there are some other, like I said, I didn't want to make this a big I'm sure there's tons of info that you can find out about this movie, but I thought that was kind of interesting just because I'll probably get into this in a minute, but the amount of influence that this movie had on me as like what I ended up doing as a career, I guess never really set in until like, I was come to a realization until I was older. But we'll talk about the movie first. Like I said, the logos, pop up and you kind of get your classic Earth sort of intro to the movie and whatnot. But one of the things I love about this movie, just from the onset, is like, and something that you don't see enough in movies, is like they set the world that you're going to be involved in like really, really well. So you get the intro where like, even one step before that, the music, that starts is just fucking, I think for you and I being band nerds, like this music just sets the tone of a very like, you're getting the underdog story. You're going to get the very like heroic, sort of thing. I mean, it opens, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't research all this, but I want to say it's like a 28 trumpet, like intro, like it's just fucking trumpets. Like at the beginning, that main theme.
Yeah.
And you can hear it.
It's like definitely like a hero's march or a hero's.
Yes.
You already can tell just in the attitude of the music. It's there's.
Yeah. And it also gets really soft, and it gets really like, it's hard to describe other than it has like a wholesome feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that drives you into the beginning, right? Which is like a community of people living in a trailer park.
Yeah.
And you get this like really cool environment with like all these different characters. There's like the old grandma, then there's like the maintenance guy, there's a young kid, there's the young woman, there's the mom like hanging the clothes. Like,
yeah,
you just get like, you get a picture painted like, without even going into like this backstory of who all these people are.
Yeah.
You get a real sense of what that is without like much other than pictures and music and tone. And like, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm the old man and I will, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I feel like in movies nowadays, there's like always this, like, I got to have this big exposition and story of where I come from or whatever. And you don't get any of that in this movie. And literally in the opening sequence, it's like you're invested and you feel like something for like everybody.
Yeah, it's like you're already part of that community, which I know that we never lived in that type of like a trailer park per se, right. But I don't. Are they usually that tight fitted? Like, I mean, it was like you were literally. The way that they showed, like as they were, you know, it's kind of like you're walking through that community. It's like they're really close. It's like I didn't think trailer parks were that. It was almost like you know, like I guess like a tribe, you know, like of like Native Americans, maybe like their teepees are like really close, like everything's right there. I guess that's kind of envisioned like a modern version of that. That's like it was a small community, very tight. Everybody knows everybody, you know, so-and-so's cable's out. You better get on that before the soaps come on. And they're like yelling it, like literally, like, I think they were passing the information to the maintenance in the beginning. They were like, hey, call Alex. 'Cause you know, she needs to have it on before the soap. And then they were soaps, just like, they would yell it to the next lady and then the next lady to the guy and then the guy, you know what I mean? So it made its way down.
Yeah, and you know, whether that was done purposely for the movie or that's how it was, like I find it's an interesting choice, right? Because I'm glad you brought that up because that's an interesting point. I never really thought about it in that sense. Like I think the tightness of that space makes everybody feel like a real community, but like a helpful, like we all care about everybody, but we're also in everybody's business. And, you know, it's really about helping each other out. And I feel like just the framing of how they do a lot of these shots and whatnot, right? So you get that real sense of that, especially when like so they're kind of doing almost like a montage of everybody. And it eventually gets around to the star, which is Alex, who's played by Lance Guest. And he's going to be our sort of our main protagonist. And like when he meets, I guess his girlfriend, Maggie. And when the high school kids come in their truck to pick him up, like you get a real sense of like the juxtaposition, right? Of like, they don't necessarily say they're a poor community, but they kind of also infer that like, this is about as good as it gets and this is really good for us and that we got a good thing going here.
Yeah.
And so let's kind of not mess it up. But then like you see the outsiders like come by and pick her up and they've got like a nice truck and everything's working and they all look good and whatever. Whereas like immediately like the cable's out, he's got to help with some plumbing issues or like things work, but they're not great, but it's better than nothing. Right. So again, like a lot is like conveyed to you without having to actually tell you any of that. Like you just kind of buy into it and you believe it right from the onset. Like, which I think is really cool. Like, 10 minutes in and you're like pretty invested into like the community and the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you also get a sense that Alex is wanting to, like he wants to leave. He wants to do something bigger and better than where that community is. And I think what's interesting too is like, I think when you talk about these sorts of films, like in this one in particular, like it's almost like metaphoric in saying like, I want to go out and adventure the world that like, and I think this actually relates to you and I like quite a bit because, we didn't necessarily grow up poor, but we also were very far from rich. Mm-hmm. And we sort of had to like be thankful for what we had, but also like going outside of that was a risk for all of us, because it's not like we had a lot of backup because we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And I feel like this movie is also sort of trying to say that, in that like the adventure of like the mind or the person, right, to wanting to move to a big city or go to the West Coast or do this or do that. And it's like, you want to do that, but it comes at a huge risk. And I feel like that's really, in a way, what this movie's about, even though it seems more metaphorically, because you're literally going into space instead of like the big city,
instead
right?
Of a big city, yeah.
Yeah. And so the stakes are like 1,000 times bigger than moving from a small area like where we were moving into like a much larger area. But I feel like that's part of what this movie is kind of sort of saying, because like, you get that sense that he wants to go to college and he wants to do this and that. But the way he portrays that, the way he talks about it when he's acting out those scenes, it almost seems like he's trying to say like, I just want something more than just this.
Yeah.
Not that this is like a bad thing, but like, I want to see the world, like I want to travel the world and
he knows there's more out there than the little community that he's almost like one of the caretakers,
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to be stuck there. He's already, dreaming of, I think they show him, there's a scene where he's kind of like staring at either his brother's got like the planets, like, like that science project thing, it's kind of hanging on the ceiling, and they kind of show him just looking at the planets, and he gets like, he wants to see what's out there,
Yeah. And it's very much like that. And so through that, like he's wanting to get out of this, and he wants to make a plan to get out. And it seems like his one distraction to a lot of those things is the fact that there is this Starfighter game in what appears to be, I guess, like the office area of this.
It's kind of like the community area, like
community center.
Yeah, kind of like the community center of the trailer park. It's like where the front office is, and
probably where you go to pay your bill. Or like your rent, or I don't know.
Like, I mean, there was like an area with picnic tables and stuff. So it was kind of like where the community could hang out, is what it looked like.
Yeah, and so I thought that was really cool, because like the game is there, and it's also like it frames a lot of this stuff really well. And so he's talking about like he wanted to go hang out with his girlfriend Maggie, but there was just too much stuff to do. He had to go take care of the cable and the plumbing and this and that. It was just too much for him to do. And I also, I don't even know if he's in high school or if those are high school kids. I assume so, because they talk about college. He and I guess most movies, like, they don't look like they're in high school. They look like they're in their 20s, but I guess regardless, everybody knows everybody's business. So I guess on that first evening where, Maggie goes out with her friends, but he's unable to. He gets left behind. Yeah. And Alex can't go. And so he ends up just kind of like playing the game. And then Maggie comes back, from her night out with friends. And then she's sort of like, they're talking about like the future, and like, maybe they can move, somewhere else, or, go to college and things will be better, and we can leave this sort of behind and go start anew, somewhere else. And in doing all that, he ends up, coming really close to breaking the all-time record, I guess the high score on the Starfighter. I guess it's called Starfighter. It's not called The Last Starfighter, but the movie is, but not the game. And it's funny because like the groundskeeper, or I guess like the maintenance guy, Otis. Yeah. He's quick to just tell everybody like, hey, Alex is about to break the top score. And like everybody rallies.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's again, it's really cool, because like, it's funny because like nowadays, like, who cares? But when you're in a community like this, and I guess there's not a whole lot going on, like breaking the top score of the Starfighter is like a big deal, I guess, and so it was kind of neat to sort of see that, and everyone's like all like rallying around.
Like, what's going on? And then he's going to break the record, and then everybody's running up there to cheer him on, which it seemed a little silly, but I mean, it was still awesome. It was still cool.
Yeah, it adds to kind of like the fantasy of it all because like, and it's funny because they do, there's like a level of realism, right? Because they're like, oh, it's going to break the top score. And like, I think one of the women looks over at the other woman. She's like, what does that mean? Like, or like she has like no idea that what
like what's going
the
on?
significance is. Like, what, who cares? But like everyone's like, oh yeah, it's like an awesome thing, you know? And again, I don't know if it's because video games were like a new thing or, you know, maybe just like an iPhone, right? When they kind of came out, everybody's like fascinated by technology and maybe this video game comes out and they're all like fascinated, even though they're not very good at it or whatever. But yeah, so he breaks the top score, which I forget what it was. I think it was like 100,000 or
it was like, no, he was like at 900,000 when Otis was like,
oh, that's right.
Like okay. You're past 100 or 900,000. And yeah.
That's right. Cause I think it's like 1 million.
Yeah.
Where he breaks that. So he gets to the top score and it's like, oh man, cool. Like everyone's like, hurrah.
Yeah. There's like a celebration and all that.
Yeah. And then I don't remember, but I think either after that or shortly after that or right around that time, like, I guess he gets word that, his loan for his college, has been like denied.
Yeah.
And so he's not gonna be able to go to college, or he not even be able to go to community college or whatever. And so he's like super bummed out. He leaves, I guess the home and he's out kind of running around, but he notices that I was going to say Starfield, the Starfighter game, is flashing and there's like, what the hell? And so it's kind of like flashing and something's kind of going on. And then, like, it's almost like a Back to the Future moment where this car just shows up that looks like a weird DeLorean looking experimental car.
Yeah, like some kind of like a minivan, pre-minivan looking.
Yeah, it's a weird design of a car, but so this car like pulls up and it has Centauri, I think is his name. That's right, Centauri.
Yeah.
So Centauri pulls up in this fancy ass ride, and tells Alex that he wants him to come with him because I forget, he kind of gives him some made up bullshit story about the creators of the game want to or they know that he like broke the top score and they they want to give him an award or a prize or something like that, but he's got to come with him. So yeah, he goes with Centauri in this car for this ride. And we quickly find out that it's really just he's basically being kidnapped by this dude in his car. And it's unsure like what is happening, but they drive off in this car and lo and behold, the car eventually like is able to launch into space.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, actually. I mean, you know, I'm sure it's going to be a big point of this discussion, which is like, it's the first time we see a lot of graphics, like computer graphics, when the car like goes through that tunnel and then launches into space and then flies into space. And it's the first time you see like a really very highly articulated, like sort of scene for 1984, which in reality, I'm sure this was made in 1983. So you're using technology that's like very ancient. Ancient to us, but, so they fly off into space, and basically, Centauri, this guy who's, he's an interesting fellow. He's kind of like he reminded me of like those kinds of, guys that have like, they represent boxers, like back in the day.
Oh, like a promoter?
Like, yeah, like a promoter. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like guys that go out and find some of the best fighters in the world, you know, or whatever, boxers. And so it turns out that Centauri is going all around the galaxy to find some of the best fighters, starfighters, in the galaxy because there's an imminent threat of like a war, and they have placed these video games throughout, I guess the galaxy.
The galaxy, yeah, what he says.
Yeah, to see who is like, who are good starfighters. And I think he tells them that the game was supposed to go to Las Vegas.
Yeah. And it ended up at a trailer park.
Yeah.
a random trailer park on a hill.
Yeah. Which is like your first sign of like the underdog story, right? Of like that was, we were supposed to put it in Vegas because it's a high dense populated area, but instead, like, it turns out like one guy's been playing it for like who knows how long, right? But so yeah, they get Centauri, or Centauri gets he gets Alex into space, and the movie kind of moves on from that point of just like, you kind of get the classic, you're here to help us fight an evil force, right? And back home, it turns out that Alex, they have made a clone, literal
the beta unit,
which is basically a clone of Alex. And I will say, in rewatching this, I now remember being really terrified about the first time that they show
it. Yes, I was going to say something about that too. I was like, I don't remember that. It freaked me out last night, just because I forgot that was there. And I was just like, holy shit, it startled me.
That was fucked up. Like, yeah, that was like some Eraserhead shit. Like, that was really, I'm with you. I kind of forgot about it too, because I think what in going back and thinking about it, so when Centauri comes to get Alex, there is a shadowy figure in the car, and he shakes hands with the shadowy figure.
Yeah, and he shocks him.
And it like shocks him, but I guess it got his DNA print or something like that. And so it was forming Alex when he was going to be off, so that there would be a beta unit or a clone back home to cover for Alex. But yeah, like that first scene where they pull the cover off, and like his skin is like breathing and
it's breathing and
it's still trying to, it's still generating. It's still forming and generating the head to the head, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, oh man.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, Alex is now at the starbase, I guess, where they've brought all the fighters, and it's a really cool like sequence, even though like it feels very like you can see what's a Hollywood set, but which it's 1984. You can say what you will about all that, but during that whole montage where he's like walking around, and you see the starfighters like in the hangar bay, like crossing each other, and they're all there's like 30 of them just kind of laid out in a big hangar bay. Like I forgot about some of those scenes, and it's like, holy cow, like they didn't even have that kind of stuff in Star Wars, which was like less than a decade before this movie, like 8 years prior.
Yeah.
And you would see all that stuff, but seeing like, I feel like for us as kids growing up, like that was how we would play as well too, of like, you'd set up these really cool shots and scenarios of like, there's going to be like 20 starships or whatever, but we never really saw that. And I think this is like one of the first times in a movie that I can think of, being that young, where you could see like, oh wow, like an armada of like cool spaceships, like all lined up together. And it was just, that was just really cool.
It was the imagery was great. It was really awesome.
It was a nice blend of things, because he's walking around, he's seeing all these aliens, and they're giving him all this like information about like what's kind of going on, but he's like at a museum. He's like looking around and just like, oh man, like what is this? What is that? And then like he sees a real it's not a starfighter. It is a oh crap, what's the name of the ship?
Damn.
I'll have to come back to it, unless you can find it there in a minute. But I guess like it adds to that fantasy, right? Of like, I've been playing this game and I've seen these ships, but now I'm seeing the real thing like in front of me. And I think that's just like, I mean, that's just awesome. That whole sequence. Yeah. So
I like the detail that they did, where like he's confused as fuck because everybody's speaking in these alien languages, and he doesn't know what like. And I liked how they're kind of using the their hand gestures, that's like the universal, right? It's like, come this way or go that way, or, but he doesn't understand what they're saying. And then they put that little clip on his collar, and then all of a sudden he can hear him. And then he's like, oh, you speak English? He's like, no, we don't speak English, but you hear the translation, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was a cool little, I guess, to add to the, okay, like something like this is possible, and it was cool. Just like, I remember, I guess, bookmarking that moment where I was like, I mean, it wasn't like necessary, but it was cool that they did it.
Yeah, you're right, because I feel like it adds, again, to a larger universe building of like, oh, okay, so everybody speaks English? Like, that's silly. And then it's like, no, they actually do speak their native languages. It's just, but how would they be able to communicate, right? And like, I feel like that I almost bet or guarantee that there was a conversation, because this movie came out in 1984 and Star Wars was 1977, so it came out like 7 years prior. And they probably had this conversation of like, are you telling me that all these guys speak English? Like, come on. Like that guy looks accent. Like a walrus. Yeah. That guy looks like a walrus. That guy looks like he's got like a hammerhead shark head, like there's no way that they speak English. And so you're right. I really like and appreciate that it didn't take much to add that. And because there's a level of realism in this movie that is different from Star Wars because of the fact that we're grounded on Earth and now we're leaving Earth. Whereas like in Star Wars, like they want you to never believe that there was an Earth or that.
Yeah, it was in a galaxy far, far away. It wasn't exactly. Us.
Yeah, and we're in a galaxy that's within reach, it sounds like. And so that particular sequence I think is really cool. Gunstar, by the way, is the name of the ship. That's what I was trying to remember.
You found it. Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because like the ship looks like a Gunstar. Like you would be like, oh yeah, I'd call that a Gunstar. So Alex is brought on with everybody else, and they're basically the classic spiel, right? Of like, hey, there's a bunch of bad dudes and we're going to fight them. And we've brought you all here because you're the best of the best. He meets Grig. I think that was his name. Grig.
Yeah, Grig. Yeah.
Who's like this reptilian kind of looking dude. I don't know if you remember that guy, Grig. He was played by Dan O'Hurley, I guess, or O'Hurley. I guess it's like Irish or something.
Right.
I don't know if you recognize him, but he is like the number one guy. Well, he's not the evil guy, but he is the guy who owns the corporation that makes RoboCop. In the RoboCop movie, like not the evil guy. Not what's his name, Dick Jones, which I think is like the evil guy that makes the other RoboCop, the Ed 209, but the guy above him is this guy, and I remember because he has a very, very distinct voice. Like, not to derail too much from this movie, but like in the scene where Ed 209 kills the guy in the boardroom. I don't know if you remember that, when he's like.
Oh, it's like malfunctions or something?
It malfunctions and it shoots that guy and kills him. And this is the boss guy. He's like, Dick, I'm very, very upset. Like, and he's like, dude, he just fucking butchered that guy. Like, that's all you have to say is you're upset. And it's like, okay. Anyway, that's the guy who plays Grig. And he has a very, very distinct voice. That's why I was like, the voices and character, like the character actors of this movie are just... They're so good. Like, it's so spot on. Like they're cartoony and almost like comic booky. They have very distinct looks, and it's great for this movie. Like it doesn't need to be the classic heroine type characters, like even the character of Alex, he's not like some handsome looking guy. He looks like a normal he looks very relatable to a lot of us. And the same with Maggie and everybody, like in the trailer park. It doesn't look like, a super hot, looking person. But,
he doesn't look out of place in like a community, like, middle to lower class kind of, it would be like, he's not like a Tom Cruise or a Brad Pitt that just doesn't look like he belongs there. Like,
right.
He looks like a normal everyday guy, like one of us. Yeah. Like you said, very relatable. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so like I think another thing to add to like the cloning phase, this movie, let me make sure. I'm pretty sure this movie is rated PG. Is that right?
PG. Yes.
Okay, this movie's PG. This movie should not have been PG, but at the same time, PG-13 had not been made yet. But I remember, so when they bring up Alex and they're going through like, hey, we're fighting this evil force. And then like the evil force, I guess, sort of like hacks in to the presentation. And it turns out that it's like, hacks. Zur. It turns out it's like a family. It's a family. He's the ambassador's son. Yeah. And so like the ambassador is like telling them this is who we're going to go fight. And it turns out it's his son. And then his son comes on screen and he's like, oh yeah, hey, we caught one of your spies. And, and then like, you know what scene I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Where I was not expecting that either. I don't remember that. I forgot
about that as well too. It's like he calls up everybody and he's like, yeah, you don't want to do this. He's almost like basically saying you don't want any of this. Like, and that we're going to destroy everybody. He's like, we caught your spy. And if you think like, we're not going to like do anything, like check this out. And they like melt the spy.
Yeah. He executes him in front of everybody. Basically.
Yeah. And it's like a very, Indiana Jones sort of like laser to the head. And it starts
just kind of starts to melt.
It was pretty hardcore. Like I was kind of like, whoa, shit. Like I forgot about that.
I was kind of stunned. I was like, I don't remember this.
It's pretty graphic.
It was graphic.
Compared
to the rest of the movie, it's like, I was like, oh fuck. Not expecting that.
Well, and it's funny, right? Because like, again, this movie it's like, it's grounded in a level of like realism, but still there's like this comic book feel to it of like the when we get introduced to more of the villains and they've got like a particular look to them and their outfits and everything, like it felt very like, I keep saying comic book because I feel like it was very like, Battlestar Galactica of the era of like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And so there's like a level of realism there. And the same's true for like the visual effects. I mean, the visual effects and the 3D work that they did, they grounded that in as much realism, I guess, as you could get out of computers back then. And so it wasn't like this like super stylized sort of look. So it ties into the movie. So it's interesting when they take these moments to have very like somewhat kind of graphic sequences, with like the melting guy and then like Alex's beta unit, like face still growing and like excuse me, it's just interesting tone wise, but it works really, really well. So I guess the movie for the most part, like from here forward, is really just your classic, like we learn a little bit more about the evil guys. Alex and Greg are going to try to join the forces with everybody to go handle this. But then, the evil guy, what was his name again? Is it Zur?
Yeah.
He basically sneak attacks and kills everybody like almost immediately. Like he kills the armada almost. Like
he has a guy on the inside, the one that sets the explosive, and it lowers their defenses, and that allows them to get the brunt of the attack, and they don't survive.
Yeah, and so they basically wipe out everybody, and then hence,
except for Alex and
Greg,
because he says he doesn't want to play with it. He's like, I don't want to do this. So he's basically no. He doesn't leave with Greg. He leaves with
Centauri.
Centauri is upset because he's basically was going to get I guess a reward for bringing his recruit. And then when he says, "Hey, I didn't sign up for this. I want out." So he basically takes him back to Earth. And while that's happening, the
sneak attack.
The sneak attack happens, and they basically just they annihilate the entire group of starfighters.
Which hence is our last Starfighter, which is Greg and Alex. And I will say, like in that sequence when they attack and they sneak attack, I think to speak a little bit to the graphic work and what was kind of being done there, like that was like highly impressive work for that time area. I mean, and honestly, even now, that is some impressive work just from the standpoint of like design, composition, like, obviously it holds up as good as something from 1984 holds up. Yeah. But like from the lighting and shading and how they had to do that, like the team that did this, I think it was called like Digital Productions was the name of the group that did this. And it basically a bunch of MIT nerds is really who these guys were, because like, unlike how I, as a 3D artist make graphics now, like that was literal like old school programming, everything, to make it work. And watching that sequence and the elaborate amount of work that went into that is like no joke, because you're effectively asking a bunch of computer nerds to pull off a lot of these pretty complicated shots that were, I believe they were all storyboarded out, so they knew how to build them. But still, like to set up a camera and to animate these like ships and everything, like it's really, really well done. Like it can be understated how good that work was for that era.
Right.
And it's honestly I was watching a documentary, a little bit of the behind the scenes on this, and it's a little shocking, but at the same time, like not surprising that this movie came out 7 years after Star Wars. And clearly this would eventually be the path of the future of where we are now. But even back in 1984, like nobody wanted to invest in it. They were just like, no, like, that sounds crazy. Like we need to keep doing miniatures because, Star Wars had done it and pulled it off and it looks amazing. And clearly like Star Wars looks better than this when it comes to starships. But the difference was you could get a way more on a screen like this that they were doing in this movie. Yeah. And also like doing more elaborate, like things like these barrel rolls.
The dogfight scenes, the dogfighting in the CGI. Yeah. That's a lot of, I know that's your world, but I gotta believe that's a lot of work.
It is. To get that done. That's not something you can do with miniatures as well back then, because to do a barrel roll, I mean, these models still need to be on like armatures and you comp that stuff out. Yeah. But like, to actually have something do like a barrel roll or a full 360 sort of thing, like that really was not feasible the way that the Star Wars guys were doing it. And so you had this like sort of crossroads, but they weren't like crossing just yet. They were kind of like seeing each other in a distance of like, wow, this looks really cool of what they're doing in Star Wars, because the lighting and the texture and the material look very real in Star Wars. But then you're seeing stuff like on the Last Starfighter of like, holy shit, like we could not pull off shots like that over here with our models, and someday we will cross, but it would not be in 1984. And so I just kind of wanted to call that out because that sequence is a very large sequence when they attack the base, and then all the ships are coming out of the bay and everyone's like getting on the ships, and the ships are, and like the gun, the blasters are like firing at the incoming targets. Like there's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's really, really cool. Yeah. It really got me excited because I feel like the young kid of me was just kind of like, oh man, I remember building Lego starships and making stuff out of cardboard and stuff, like designing these sorts of ships and things, because you would see them here, and it was like, man, I want to. How can I do that? Right? How can I build that stuff?
Yeah. That's the best we had was Legos, because we would envision kind of like a director almost, like you'd envision this thing that you wanted to play out, and we would either cardboard or toilet paper roll the shit out of that stuff and make like towers or whatever, and
or thrusters, or
Legos. I remember getting like a little motor so I could make a helicopter that I could make the propeller actually move. With a battery and all that. It was. Yeah. I just remember doing dumb shit like that, but it's just. This was such an awesome.
Yeah, it's all inspired from movies like this, right?
Absolutely.
It's like seeing this sort of stuff. So I guess just to kind of sort of wrap on the movie side of things. Like basically, like Alex has a change of heart. He just is like, you know what, maybe I do need to go back and help these guys, and I do need to follow through on what I want to do. If this is how I want to see the world, this is literally me seeing the world. Yeah. Meanwhile, the enemy has sent an assassin to go kill him on Earth.
Yeah, I don't know how they discovered that one got away, but but they like, well, we one starfighter remains, so they're gonna go kill him off.
Yeah, and that creature, that alien guy, that guy looked creepy with the eyeballs off to the side and kind of a weird like a, I don't know, like a hammerhead shark kind of a weird. But
it had like this toxic Avenger look to it with the eyes way the hell out here.
Yeah, and like kind of melty face or whatever.
It was funky.
So I thought that was also kind of funny because that's also when the two Alexes run into each other.
Oh, that's right.
The beta unit and Alex, and the only reason I bring that up, and I think it's kind of funny, is just because I think I don't know. I feel like in a, and not to get on any sort of tirade or whatever, right? But of political correctness or whatever. But in this movie, I like in that scene in particular, what also makes it feel very grounded, which is when the two Alexes are talking and Lewis, the younger brother, is like kind of annoyed because he's like, he doesn't realize that there's two of them.
Yeah.
And Alex is like, go to bed, Lewis, or I'll tell mom about your Playboys. And because in the scenes prior, they show him like pulling out like a Playboy, I guess, from underneath his mattress. Or something like that.
Yeah.
And so like, there's like sort of this innocence of like, you know, hey, you really shouldn't be doing that, but he somehow got a hold of one. And then even the beta unit, he's like, wait a minute, what? And that's the other thing too, right? This movie's PG, and Lewis like comes down underneath the bed and he's like, what the shit? Because he sees his brother. And I'm like, whoa, did he just cuss? And he's like, Lewis, I told you, if you don't go to bed, I'm going to tell mom about your Playboys. And it's just like that whole sequence, I think also just like sort of encompasses this grounded realism and fun and like, I don't know, like something about like a fairy tale sort of kind of addition to all of this. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I feel like that scene in particular just kind of encapsulates a lot of things, you know, that I kind of miss a lot from movies, you know, that's like PG, because there's no real cussing in this movie except for a very few scenes in that one scene where he says like, what the shit? Like,
the youngest kid, the little brother is the one that's like the mischievous, has the Playboys and is the one he's like, what the hell? What the shit? You know? And
And it's just really, really well done. And so, Alex eventually, he avoids the, getting assassinated and goes with Centauri back to space to find out that like everybody's been killed. And so it's just him and Grigg. And so they're the last starfighters. They're the last hope of of everybody. And I guess the thought is after these guys killed this group, they're going to go on to other planets, and eventually they will get to Earth.
Yeah.
So he's like, you know, you need to do this for the betterment of everybody. And so Alex agrees. There are a few more sequences that sort of play out in space, which all leaves it to the big space battle at the end, which is against it's basically literally the David and Goliath of like a giant armada against one like gun star.
Yeah.
Which is classic, right? Like just it's you or nobody, kid. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like we could talk an hour about that end sequence. It's so cool. Cause they kind of go through, I guess prior to that, they get into a fight where they kind of get a better understanding of the actual gun, the gun star and how it works and how it operates.
Yeah.
And all the controls and everything. And then, so they kind of, leads up to the end, where, they come up with a plan, to take out like the armada. I guess they have to take out the main ship.
The main ship controls all the smaller ones.
Yeah. So basically, I guess it's like the queen bee.
Kind of. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, and I guess they, and just because it seems like an impossible task, because he's going against an entire fleet with a mothership, and it's just one starfighter. So how the hell do you beat that? So then it's basically just, kill the head off the snake, or, cut the head off the snake. So they decide to hide and let it pass so that they can come from behind and attack that way and try to get that kill shot before everything converges on them. But that leads up to the big, incredible fight scene at the end. So yeah. But I know you want to talk about that. So yeah.
Well, and so it's funny because in the earlier part of the movie, it is hinted at that there is a special weapon on the Gunstar, which I think was it famously. I guess everybody. I don't know. I feel like everybody in the 80s. Like would have something that they always want to call like the Death Blossom, like whether it was a skating move or like if doing something on your BMX bike or whatever. Yeah. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna execute the Death Blossom. Like I'm gonna push the button, and they don't really explain what it is until the time comes. And I think what's really neat about it is the guy who designed this ship, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but. And there's a really cool, I think it's on the disc. There's a really cool, interview with the designers and the graphics people, but the guy who designed the ship, the Gunstar ship, he was actually he's a classically trained illustrator, but also he was understood, aircrafts and how modern, or I guess modern of the day of the 80s of how aircrafts work. So he designed that ship to actually truly function as a working craft, like a working spacecraft. And so he designed it with the thought of a Death Blossom move would actually work with this ship. It wasn't an afterthought. You know what I mean? They didn't think it'd be cool. Yeah. He actually had that in mind, so that's why the ship is designed the way it is. And that's why that sequence looks cool. So it's hard to describe the Death Blossom without having a visual, but basically it is almost a gyroscope. It's as if a spaceship has a center point and it rotates in any direction, in all directions, firing in all directions. So it's almost like a gimbal. It's like a gimbal spin, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's going to stay fixed, and then whatever happens around it, that's going to move in all directions, but the gimbal will stay in the center point. And so that's effectively what Death Blossom is. And so when they've taken out the mothership from behind, sneak attack, and the remaining ships are left, and there's more of them than one ship left, he's like, all right, it's time to bring them all into range. Yeah. And once they are
getting hit, and he's going, no, we gotta wait. Yeah. And Greg is like, no, not yet. And it's one of those typical, and that's how you see the whites of their eyes, and
exactly.
He gets everybody in, and then he's like, all right, do it.
Do it. Yeah. And so what's funny about that too, I saw an interview with Lawrence Guest, and he talked about when they filmed that sequence of them doing the Death Blossom, normally, and this actually makes sense, but normally you would move the camera around. You would sit still and the camera will move all around you to sort of get that sort of shot of of that gimbal spin, or whatever. And so what ends up happening, or I guess the way he ends up telling the story is that the way they decided to film that was they actually put him in a gimbal. And so instead of the camera moving around him, he was actually in almost like the way they would train, astronauts and stuff. And so he was actually spinning in the gimbal, and kind of moving all around and kind of doing all these things and whatnot. And so he was talking about how they filmed him doing that. He got really sick from doing it. But it also made the shots and everything, it actually looked better, for them to sort of do it that way. So Death Blossom, like I said, I don't know, Death Blossom it was such a cool it was such a cool phrase, such a cool term. Like,
yeah, it just sounded badass.
Like it sounded like you wanted to go and punch somebody with Death Blossom, or like it sounded like a kung fu sort of thing. But, yeah, I mean, honestly, I guess like that for the most part wraps up the movie. I think it does have a very like, it has a really neat, I would say, very like fantasy, comic book sort of ending in that like, there's like a big, like everybody's like, hooray, like they all are like praising, Alex, cause he's, he has saved like all these people from like certain death and they basically are like, we can take you back home. But I guess there's this realization of like, you know what, like this is probably what I should be doing. Right. I've always wanted to leave and do something else. And this is my opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He gets asked to, someone needs to rebuild the fleet.
Yep.
Because they lost everything.
Yeah.
So they have to rebuild it. So they basically ask him to rebuild.
Yeah. Well, who'll be
everything.
The one, right?
Yeah.
And he realizes like, well, I'd have to leave everything behind, but that was something on his mind already. And so it's cool because the ending sequence, he comes back to Earth and he comes back to the trailer park, and relays the ship. Yeah. which is awesome. And it was just kind of funny too, because I remember, and I don't know if you remember this as a kid too, like I kept thinking like, how does this thing land? But then you think about it and the way they show, I guess there's effectively an elevator that sort of comes down the middle.
Right.
And he kind of comes off. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to Boba Fett's like designed ship, which is like it flies.
Like
vertically.
Yeah, the cockpit. Yeah, the cockpit. It rotates.
Right. Yeah.
So that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I didn't think about that. The slave one, it's similar.
Yeah, because you would think that this would land like in a horizontal, but it lands vertical, which is interesting. But so he comes back and explains to everybody that like, hey, like this is a real thing. Like, the fact that I saved Earth without like anybody knowing that I saved Earth, or the future of Earth down the road. And, everybody's like, just like, oh my God, it's like the ship from the game. And he explains to Maggie, like, hey, I want you to come back with me because like we talked about wanting to do something on our own. And this is
and being together forever and blah, blah, blah.
And this is our opportunity. This is our chance. So it's really, I like what I was saying earlier. It's like for younger people or people like us, right, who are watching this of like, it was almost a metaphor for like, at some point in our lives, like we may want to leave home, but it's going to require like a lot of fight and a lot of like strength internally to be able to leave the comforts of home and go on to do your own things in life or whatever. And it kind of feels like that from the ending because yes, he's going to go rebuild the Armada, but at the same time, it's like, man, he did something that he didn't really think he could do. And so almost the lesson is really like, you'll never know until you try. And I feel like that's part of what this movie is sort of like telling that story. Right.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends again with like, just like a fucking epic, like, I don't think I ever told you this. I think maybe, I mean, obviously I told this to Denise, my wife, but, I don't know. It didn't really make a lot of sense to her. So I didn't really want to push it. But when we got married, I wanted, when they, I now pronounce you man and wife, and you walk back down the aisle, I wanted it to be to the Last Starfighter theme, bum, 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 like, and I wanted that to be played, cause it just seemed very like epic, like this big epic moment. Yeah. But she had never seen The Last Starfighter, so she didn't really get it. And
she wouldn't have gotten the reference.
Yeah. I like, it would have been fun for me and maybe like 5 people at the wedding, because everybody would be like, what the hell is this? And it's like, it's the theme from The Last Starfighter. So I just dropped it. I was like, no, it's fine. Whatever. If we ever have like an anniversary party, we'll do it then. But yeah, the music just fucking, I wished it was more music like for movies like that nowadays. I guess like Marvel movies and stuff, they kind of do that sort of things, but I don't know. There's something about the music and how it works with the imagery and everything. Like, I don't know. It's a real star for me. You know, man, I don't know. I think watching this last night, I'm curious, and probably same for you. It's just like, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't remember, but man, did it ever like bring back like a ton of like feelings and emotions of being like a young person watching this and just fucking being floored by like what I was seeing. I could not believe what I was seeing almost, you know, as like an 8-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely one of those that I remember enjoying watching. I mean, I can appreciate it now again with like, you know, the older eyes, I guess, now with, you know, life experience and all that stuff. And like you said, I mean, you really are, you know, when you're talking about the whole, you know, the being scared of, but at the same time, really, really wanting to leave your comforts of home or whatever. Yeah. And then, you know, I mean, cause like I got married and I left for the army at 19. I was just gone, you know, it just, you know, I got on, you know, not a starship, but I got on a bus, a Greyhound that took me to Oklahoma, you know, but yeah, it's like you were saying, I guess I hadn't thought about the message behind it, but now that, you know, but it's like the whole, you know, the kid who wants more than this, there's got to be more than this life that I have right now. And then the opportunity just presents itself, and then you get, you know, and that's it. You kind of, but then you're, you know, and it's funny because like, you know, for the kid through the whole beginning, the kid that is like, I want to get out of here. And then he gets taken. Oh, and then he's like, "Oh, take me back! What the hell? I didn't sign up for this. Get me the fuck out of here!"
Yeah.
You know, and then you know, and then just to kind of have that moment that I guess you have that epiphany where you're like, "This is what I wanted. This is, you know, this is what I, you know." He has that moment of realization, and then he's like, "Okay, I this is something bigger than me," and blah blah blah. Like he has that. He's like the aha, you know, that moment, and then he goes out and, you know, saves the world or the galaxy, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, then I mean, I guess, you know, you made me think about that now instead of just the graphics and stuff, you know.
And I really didn't really feel that as much until I like revisited it again and really, like, I guess with a lot of life experience behind us, right? Because I mean, we could go on and on about the stories of, like, you know, trying to become adults, right? You know, like when you moved on, and then you're like driving, you know, you're driving tanks, and you know, I'm building 3D graphics, you know, in school, and either way, like the point more being though is like we're fighting our own armadas, and, you know, we're doing our own things in our own ways. And yeah, it really started to set in when I was watching. I was like, wow, like I never really thought about it, you know, and like, it's cool because I feel like it subconsciously set in some of those things, you know, where like, I'm sure when times would get rough for us as we were young adults becoming older adults, that you're like, oh man, I can do this, you know, like I can do this like Alex did, you know, and take on the fleet, in your own way, whatever that may end up being. But, I think the other side of it too, you know, obviously I've always been, classic middle kid of like just fascinated and interested in so many things. And like, I mean, I remember seeing this movie as a kid and wanting to understand, like, how are they doing that? Like, how do you do that? And how do you build that? And I, you know, we didn't have as much access to magazines and stuff that would have informed us about those things back then. So I just assumed that it just somehow wizardry happens. I never really thought about it, but it's funny because if you watch the documentary of these guys making this, like, they look like your classic computer nerds, you know, with like button down shirts, and, you know, because they are coding this stuff because it does not exist, right? They're like, oh yeah, I wrote a program that will allow us to drop more lights in the scene. And it's like, oh man, if we can drop more lights, that means we can like do these cooler shots and this and that. And like, seeing that documentary actually like brought up a lot of PTSD for me, because they were talking about like doing the math of like, okay, when do we need to get this done? And how many shots do we have to do? And how long does it take to render these things? And it's like, okay, well, according to my math, like it'll take 17 months to render all of these scenes. It's actually not possible to do what you're asking.
in the time frame that
right. So they had to get more people on board to do it because they had to split up the work, right? And that's how I, like, when I went to art school, that's how I had to learn, because I was trained in more film and not like in video games. And so it was very much like, we're going to render. Like, I mean, you're literally classic animation, right? It's drawing every single frame and it's rendering it to a computer. And then you have to compile all those images together and then it'll make your movie. And then you have to put that to a VHS tape. Or at least I did back when I was still doing that. And, and so hearing them talk about it, and they were talking about, they used what was called, and I have the statistics here, cause this is almost somewhat hilarious. They were using what was called the Cray 1. I think it was a supercomputer. CRAY is the name, the Cray. It weighed 5.5 tons. This supercomputer did. And I think it sits now at the Museum of Science in London, or one of them. But they used a system which was developed and built for basically like high-end supercomputing and rendering graphics in this particular sense is what they did. It had a 64-bit processor at 80 megahertz, with 8 megabytes of RAM. Just 8.
Good God.
It had a storage unit of 303 megabytes of storage unit.
Dude, that's crazy.
It is insane to think like it's a fraction of what our phone can do right now. Like, our phone is effectively would have been if we had gone back in time. It's like, hey, I have a supercomputer in my hand. This thing like is massive. It looks like a giant, like a C, because like they're all like all the shell of the computer like kind of makes like a C, and you could stand in the middle of that thing and it would probably generate enough heat to probably bake you. But that's what those guys used, and seeing them talk about it and kind of go through it, I would still be super intimidated if I was a young person and saw that, because I would not have thought like I could do that. But then by the time I got into this in the 90s, like tools and technology advanced a little bit more, where it actually was still very technical, but not as much as technical for those guys. And even nowadays, like today, it is way more accessible than it is even like 25 years ago when I started looking into that. You know, like you had to be very technically sound and understand a lot more things. And now it's like a fun tool to play with, and anybody can do it. And I think that's really cool. But this very much like inspired, I think, me. I mean, along with Star Wars and a number of other things. But yeah, man, I think we have to ask the question, and I almost kind of know where this is going, but we kind of have to ask the question: is this a top shelf video? And
I want you to go first.
This is absolutely a top shelf video. I almost like it's funny because like as we talk about our shop, it's like, well, you know, this, that, and once the music kicked in, and then like Alex's face is all melty, and like the graphics and the Death Blossom, I was like, man, everybody needs to watch this movie. Like, I need to make sure that everybody sees The Last Starfighter. So this is like, without a doubt, like a top shelf video for me. I don't know how you feel, but
that's why we're brothers, man. Because I would have been shocked if you had said it was not a top shelf video, because this is everything, encompasses everything that we want a top shelf video to be. You know, it's a nice tight hour and 40 minutes. There really isn't any slow scenes.
Pacing is really good.
The pacing's really good. Like you said, you touched on the music. Obviously, the graphics were,
way ahead of its time.
Way ahead. Yeah, it's ahead of its time for 1984. And it's just the whole, hero, the whole, like you said, the whole story behind it. The real, wants more out of life, gets an opportunity, takes advantage of it. Here's the hero, gets the girl, bam, gets to fly a badass ship.
Yeah.
You know, and but yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely top shelf video.
Yeah, I feel like
without a doubt.
And this is one of the few times that I feel like I would have this on every format that we could get, because I feel like for nostalgic reasons, I think some people may want to watch this on VHS because it honestly it kind of it masks, you know, the graphics a little bit. They actually feel more like you're watching a video game on a tube TV or on a 4x3 display, you know, with a little bit of texture and a little bit of noise, you know, to the television. And I feel like that's a good way to watch it. I'm sure it's fine on DVD. I know that I have the Arrow edition. Actually, I'm pretty sure I have like the 25th anniversary edition, which is just a DVD, but I have this. This is from Arrow, and this is like a really nice. This is a really nice restoration that this one's a bit cleaned up, but I know as of more recent, there is like a 4K version, which I wish I had known about, because now I'm going to go buy that 4K version. Cause what I love about 4K is like, they always remaster the audio, and it's so like it can hold, you know, a 4K disc can hold way more audio storage. And usually they go back and they refine the audio. So like the surround sound and everything is like, it's 1,000 times better than like a Blu-ray, and you can really like get that sense of audio. So I almost want to go get the 4K to get with this, to go along with this one. But I feel like one of the things that what comes with this as well too, if I can show you this, but inside the
movie
disc
poster
comes with like the movie poster.
The movie poster, yeah.
Yeah, and then they did like their version,
like the alternate.
Yeah, this is like their more updated version, but
yeah.
Yeah, so I would say this is like an all format, you know, sort of movie. I'd love to have this in 4K with the best of the movies that are out there. I would want people to, you know, maybe first timers who've never seen it. I'd be like, you know what, maybe you want to watch this on VHS, and if you love it, come back, buy yourself a 4K, because you want to hear this in like the best surround sound that you can get, because it'll blow you away a second time, sort of thing. So yeah, man, it's kind of like a, I don't know, like finding a really great, I don't know, like a greasy spoon where like you find a good burger place that you're kind of glad that you have it, and you don't indulge in it all the time. And that's how this movie kind of feels. Cause I'm just like, oh man, like I don't want to eat it too much, cause I don't want to get sick of it. But man, when you have it, it's so good. Like it's just, it's just a banger of a movie. Like there's so many things that you could just go on and on and on about of what makes this movie kind of great and fun. So yeah, definitely top shelf, and every format we can get our hands on. We're gonna have it in the shop. What do you think? Do you this may be a rhetorical question, but is there anything for the shop that you would like from this movie to put into the store? I feel like there's an obvious answer.
Besides an arcade game.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the arcade.
the real like, obvious.
Yes. Cause I think Nintendo actually made there's a Last Starfighter game that came out on the Nintendo, which is, I'm shocked that we didn't know about it. But we also didn't get a lot of games.
But we didn't, yeah.
They didn't come down like,
we got the Nintendo later on. So,
well, and also we didn't really have a lot of places to buy games. So more often than not, it's not like we basically had little access to outside of the mainstream games of like Mario and Zelda, and there weren't as many, we didn't have as much of a variety of catalogs and stuff. I definitely want to get a poster for this movie. The poster art is very, reminiscent of like, your classic 80s, you know, like Drew Struzan, the guy who did the posters for Indiana Jones and Star Wars and the Goonies and Big Trouble
like E.T., all that stuff. Yeah.
Like he had a very unique style, and I think they tried to. It's kind of funny because this movie feels like, especially from a marketing standpoint, they're like, we need to really cash in on the idea of space right now with a lot of people. So let's really sell that. And the poster was very reminiscent of like the art of Drew Struzan. So it's very cool. It's very nostalgic. I'd love to have a poster for that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would want. I mean, I don't, if we sold model kits, I would be like, I want to sell like the Gunstar model kits.
Ooh.
But at the same time,
That'd
it's like,
cool.
It'd be cool. I don't know where it would fit in our store. Like we don't really have, I mean, I guess we can put whatever we want, wherever we want. It's just like, where do you put the toy models? Like,
I guess we'd have to just assemble one and just have it hanging, above the register, above the registers or something.
Like an oversized. I'd want an oversized one, like a, like what, maybe like a 3 foot, 4 foot, like 5 foot version. Kind of. Right. That would be awesome. I'd be down for that. Like having one overhead. Or what would be cool is if they had like a cardboard standee. This kind of makes me, I don't know if do you remember as a kid, I want to say, unless I'm like thinking maybe a dream or whatever, but I want to say after watching this movie, we went and got a cardboard box and we made like the inside of like a Gunstar in that, like we cut out like a part of the cardboard and then put like a HUD, like where we cut out
like the crosshairs.
We cut out the crosshairs and then like we cut little circles in the cardboard to look like the inside of a ship, and we wanted buttons, and I think we just drew them with like Sharpie markers and like we made our own cockpit. Just because I know we all love this movie. I don't know if you remember that. Because I think we had like one of Dad's chairs that was like on wheels, and we wanted to attach it. Like, if I remember, we attached it. Like we somehow got it attached, maybe to like a milk crate or something, because we would take turns sitting in the chair with the wheels, and then we'd sort of like push each other around with like with basically like a HUD in front of us so that we could like act like we were like in the pilot seat like that Alex had. And I vaguely remember that, but I don't know if there's something sellable like that at the store, but
no, probably not. I mean, I remember doing stuff like that. I can't remember if it was specific to this movie, but I do remember, like, we would, we had good imaginations. We were very creative. I mean, and just doing stuff like that with, cardboard boxes or, whatever was laying around. I mean, that's what we did. We didn't need TikTok for instructions. We just,
I guess
we already had it. Yeah, we just did it.
Yeah, we were trusted with knives, so I guess
no shit.
We kind of went from there. Well, okay, then we'll go with posters, maybe a cardboard cutout if they have like a Gunstar, cutout, maybe like a 3D looking one that we can just kind of, like you were saying, we can kind of hang. Maybe it's got like the logo. What was there's like there's like a tagline. I thought that was a tagline, right? Or something, or maybe I'm just thinking, I thought that was something like, I think it's like, it's the speech, right? That that Centauri, I think he's the voice in the video game where he gives you like a little speech. I'd have to remember and look at what that is, but because I remember he's like, "Greetings, Starfighter," da 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 da.
Oh, yeah, and you're gonna protect the galaxy from the whatever forces of. Yeah,
I almost feel like I used to remember that. Like I knew it by heart when we were younger, because it always sounded cool, like "Greetings, Starfighter." The only other thing I can think of is like maybe a cool T-shirt, like tying it in with Top Shelf Video. Like, what would be cool? Okay, I'm just gonna make up shit now. What would be cool is to have like kind of like a pilot's, like, what do they call them? Like a flight jacket, but like a space flight jacket.
Yeah.
So have it like with like the emblems of like the Gunstar and like, Maybe if you have enough rentals, we get you a patch or something like along those lines. We could do something like that.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. You see, now we're gonna have like a clothing line. But
I don't know.
But yeah, no, I can totally see like a pilot's like I guess they call them like a fighter pilot, like a jacket. Like those are a little pricey, but I mean,
exclusive item.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, or seasonal. Maybe for our premier members. Like if you sign up for like a year, like maybe for a year-long membership to the video store and premium, maybe if you do it for like 3 years, we get you a jacket or something. I don't know. But you got to be 3 consistent years. And you have to rent so many things from the store. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure out something. But well, anyway, that was fun, man.
That was a lot of fun. That was an awesome recommendation.
Yeah, I'm glad we went with that choice. But there are a few others that I think and I will say I'm not purposely trying to pull only 1984. It just seems like that was a very pivotal year for like a lot of us, because I was 8, you were 11, you know. I guess Mario was like 5, so like we were all at that age where we were definitely, our brains were kind of getting blown away by some of the things that we were seeing and just sort of living and absorbing. So it was really neat. Yeah. Well, cool, man. I feel like we need to get back to work. Well,
popcorn ain't gonna pop itself.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave you into reaching out to a video or a game, like an arcade or something, to see if we can get a copy or get what it's going to take to get that into the shop. I'm going to start ordering inventory, because I definitely want to make sure I want to make sure that people are getting their hands on this like as soon as possible, because I think this is a great any night movie. It's a great summer movie right now that we're kind of in the summer. I feel like there's just so many cool things about it that we gotta get on the case. But all right, man. Yeah. You do that. I'll do my part, and then I guess we will talk at the end of the shift again. So
sounds good.
All right, man. I will talk to you later.
Okay. All right, man.
All right. See ya.
Later. Bye.